Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Medical Mondays. Honorable Ajay, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you for choosing to make health and wellness your priority. This is Medical Mondays with Dr. Ho, where we engage in an educative chat on medical issues and health issues. This evening, we continue with our series on cancer and why Blacks or the minority group are affected so badly. And so, for the introduction of our guest and the chat, I hand you over to Dr. O.
Good evening again. So tonight, we have one of our brothers, one of our sons, who is doing cutting edge medicine, whose passion is really something that dearly affects African Americans and that needs to be addressed: sickle cell. He's done extensive work in sickle cell. He's a physician. However, he wears many other hats. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself better, but tonight he's going to talk to us about cancer. I was shocked when I saw that even though we are not the most impacted by cancer, but African Americans, Black people, are the ones that actually die most from cancer. So tonight, I'm really excited that we would find out, some reasons why that is, and maybe ways to protect ourselves. So I introduce Dr. David Ajibade, who would bless us tonight with information on cancer and how it impacts Black people. So Dr. Ajibade. He was here a few minutes ago. Dr. Ajibade. Well, as you all know, and as I just heard, a lot is going on with social media. Since yesterday, we heard in the West Coast, Dr. Veronica just told us about the internet going in and out in the West Coast all through the night and today. And today, we heard that Facebook and I think WhatsApp were affected or something happened. I don't know if somebody knows exactly. I've been at work all day. I don't know exactly what happened, but nobody could access them. Until a few minutes ago. WhatsApp is on. I hope Facebook is on too. So I'm wondering if this is affecting him. He's calling me on the other line. I'm going to use to Honorable Gustav.
You're muted. Honorable Gustav, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Dr. O. And we work in the background to get Dr. Ajibade on the line. It was on when we started, but of course, we have been experiencing a lot of technical issues worldwide, as Dr. O said, Facebook, Messenger, all down. But coming back a few minutes ago, so that's a challenge that we face with technology. Remember that Medical Monday is on YouTube, Medical Mondays with Dr. O. Please subscribe and hit the like button so that you will get our programs the moment it is uploaded. And it is also on Facebook. Medical Mondays with Dr. O.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ajibade is back. And so I'm going to yield to him to introduce himself again, or, and take this over. Welcome back.
Thank you, Dr. O. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. Dr. Ajibade is my name. I obviously from Nigeria. I have a foundation. We run a foundation called the Brain and Body Foundation. And as the name implies, we do a lot with brain disorders, especially in children, everything from cerebral palsy to autism to seizure disorders and so on and so forth. We also, as a result of the work we're doing, we also got into the field of sickle cell disease because children started coming to our foundation who were having strokes from sickle cell disease. And that's when we found out how big a problem sickle cell disease is. And so it has been our passion now to address that because it's a big problem in Africa, Nigeria being the country with the most number of Black people on the planet, and sickle cell disease being primarily a Black problem. It seemed only right that the solution should come out of Nigeria. And we've been fortunate by God's grace to be able to address that. We found out that simple nutrients, especially nutrients given in the right doses at the right time, can make a huge difference. And considering the fact that over 50% of the children who are born with sickle cell disease each year die before their 5th birthday, it seemed like to me that this is a national emergency that needs to be addressed. So I'm currently in the US seeking to address that, to raising funds to do research back home to demonstrate the results that we have been seeing in the last 4 or 5 years. I'm also host of a TV show, which is ongoing. I hope you can all hear me. Can you all hear me? Okay, the Dr.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Sounds great.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm also the host of a show on NTA and NTA International called Your Health in Your Hands. It's a medium through which we reach the layperson as part of our mandate from the federal government is to teach lay people about the principles of health, especially from a Black person's perspective. And I don't need to say that with the fact is, color is not skin deep. It goes right down into the genes. And unfortunately, we have not, I think in the Western world, has not taken the Black person into cognizance as much as they should. And you can't really blame them. They have to do research on their own people. But Black people have our own unique challenges. And so I felt that we need to educate the lay people on how they can better take control of their health. And it's among the top Nigeria for sure. I don't know about Africa, but we've been very fortunate to reach a lot of people that way. So thank you, Dr. O. That introduction, is there anything else I should have said? Dr. O.
Oh, no. Thank you. I know you do a much better job with, introducing yourself with the wealth of what you do. And so thank you for that. We can't wait for this cancer thing because it's ravaging. And I shared just before you came back that I was putting together a talk and found out that Black people actually have a lesser incidence of cancer than Caucasians, but they die more. So I hope your talk addresses, something like that. So over to you.
Okay, all right. I should start sharing my slides at this point. Give me a second, let me just get that up. Okay, let me know when you see the screen so I can proceed. Yes? No? Can we see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Perfect.
We can see your screen. Yes.
Perfect. Let me just see. Yes. Okay. So we want to talk about cancers among Blacks, and obviously by Blacks we mean everybody of African descent, whether you're living in Nigeria or elsewhere, or in the US or elsewhere. The objective is not to scare you, but there's a lot of bad news where Blacks are concerned. But more important is to let's say, just let me use a Nigerian term, ginger you to begin to take the right steps at your age, whatever age you are, and to be able to be more proactive and more aware of your health. And also to be able to teach your children and those after them about what they need to do, especially where ladies are concerned, because this October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, again, it's a big problem. Dr. O said something about cancers. I don't know about, that may apply to other aspects, but where breast cancer is concerned, in the US, Black people are diagnosed with the worst form and they die, like you said, more regularly. I don't know if the incidence is less among Black women, but it is certainly a big problem. So like I said, we want to raise awareness about this and also point you to certain things that I feel that everybody should be aware of as a preventive measure. It was while we were studying sickle cell disease that I looked at, I saw that there was a pattern. There were 4 main things that we could find out, we'd seen in individuals with sickle cell disease, that were the 4 areas in which they were deficient. I called them the 4 horsemen. And I began to apply this whenever I treated kids with sickle cell disease under the supervision of the government. But in the process, I began to realize that for most of our chronic diseases today, whether it's diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, strokes, dementia, these are the same 4 underlying principles. I would say about over 90% of all chronic diseases will have these as the underlying factors. And if we can address these underlying factors, and I've seen it over and over again, if we can focus on these 4 basic principles, these 4 basic mechanisms, we can get significant improvements. And I want to highlight beyond that the 2 that are in red: immune function, especially for cancer, and inflammation. Immune function and inflammation, I'll talk about that some more as we go along. But we got to reduce inflammation going on in our bodies. We've got to reduce it. People think only of inflammation in terms of pain and redness and swelling, things that you can perceive, but it is, from the worst kinds of inflammation are those that you cannot perceive at all. And hope we'll get around to talking about it. So here are a couple of things, just with the time we have. How much time do we have, Dr. O, please? And just so I don't make sure I don't go.
Present. I know your presentations are usually like 15 to 20 minutes. You'll be fine.
Okay, I've set my stopwatch.
Just go ahead.
Okay. Let's first of all start with, I mentioned Western diseases. So what they are finding out is that all these conditions, if you can see it, all these conditions are more common and they are worse among Black people. I know it sounds strange. I mean, when you see something like multiple sclerosis in medical school, I thought that was an exclusively white condition. There are some other things here that we all thought were white conditions, but now we're finding out that it's worse among Black people. Let's talk about cancers. The general principle when you're talking about cancers of any kind is that they are more prevalent, they start at an earlier age, they're more aggressive, they spread more quickly, and you people are enjoying this. I'm not. They are more likely to die, less responsive to treatment, and the one that comes up to me is triple negative breast cancer in women. It's more common among Blacks. It is more likely to return after treatment. And these are some of the findings. African Americans have the highest death rate and shortest survival of any racial and ethnic group in the US for most cancers. We know that prostate cancer disproportionately affects Black men. This is not just a finding in the US, it's a finding in everywhere you have a significant Black population. In the UK, in South Africa, in Australia, it disproportionately affects Black men. Some are pointing to, and we'll get to some of the causes very soon, but some are pointing to testosterone, but it's not straightforward testosterone. It's some kind of metabolites, and it's a complex pathophysiology. But bottom line is that Black men, and by the way, Black men do have higher levels of testosterone on average than white men do. Maybe that's responsible for why they're more aggressive. But there's an indication that it's either a metabolites or something related to testosterone that makes them that is higher in Black men. They haven't come to any conclusion yet, but that is a fact that is worse in Black men. Black men are 28 to 56% more likely to develop prostate cancer. I'm going to rush through some of these things. Bottom line is that it's worse. Black men have a higher cancer death rate than white men. African American women have a 20% higher death rate than white women for all cancers. And the big ones, obviously, are breast and prostate cancer. Black women, by far, have more death rates from breast cancer than white women do, and any other race. Same thing with black men for prostate cancer. All right. Again, this is Breast Cancer Month, so I'm actually doing a four-step series for an organization called Black Women Empowered. It's a very big organization. They have a huge presence on Facebook and elsewhere. They asked me to do a 4-step series. So if you're interested, we can give you more information about that. It's diagnosed earlier, it's harder to treat, it's more aggressive, and they tend, and I keep on saying this. I'm going to say a quick note. What they found out is that the worst kind of breast cancer, Black women tend to have it twice as much, or they're more likely to have it twice as much than white women do. And it's a very difficult cancer to treat because they can't really find any specific targets. There's a lot of talk about how to treat it, but they haven't come to any conclusion, and it tends to recur. So here's the big question. Why are Blacks worse off? Here are some of the things they're finding out. Genes, we'll say a little bit about that. Big problem. And that could be related to our genes too, but it's also related to our lifestyle. We tend not to eat the right kind of foods. We tend not to exercise and put our health as a premium. Especially when it comes to Black women tend to prioritize the health of everybody else except their own. Take care of the whole family and their extended family and blah, 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 blah. I've mentioned diet, less activity. Of course, if you have me on any show, I will talk about vitamin D because that is a common denominator, no matter the condition we're talking about. Let's say a little bit about genes. So, like I said, we tend to have high obesity. We don't know whether it's what exactly it is in the genes. There are some mutations that seem to be more common, called the BRCA1 mutation, seem to be more common among Black women than in white women, which predisposes them to cancer. Obesity, we can't do much about genes. So let's focus on the lifestyle and the things we can focus on. The obesity increases the risk of breast cancer fourfold. That is what they are finding out. So I just felt I should take a break here and just talk about how cancer happens in the first place, because it doesn't just jump on you out of the blue, even though you have the genes for it. The genes will remain dormant, or the mutations will remain dormant until they are triggered by an event. And many times that event is either according to your lifestyle or your environment. And unfortunately, most of us are just ignorant of these factors. So let's talk a little bit about the basic principles, how cancer happens. Okay, let me just define what a cancer is. Abnormal growth, bottom line, but it's not just abnormal growth, because a keloid is abnormal growth. A polyp is an abnormal growth. The difference with cancer is that the cells are not poorly mature, they're not poorly defined, they have a poor architecture, they tend to be very roughshod. They tend to be difficult to die. They've escaped the cell's control mechanisms that says when you reach a certain age, kill yourself. That process is called apoptosis. They've escaped that mechanism. Normally, most people, when a cell becomes defective, the body destroys it or it triggers its own death. With cancer cells, that is not so. But the most important thing is metastasis, number 4 there. It tends to spread away from the original tissue or organ in which it originated. So for example, if you have breast cancer, that cancer can escape and get into the bloodstream, the cancer cells get into the bloodstream, spread to the brain and begin to colonize the brain. And not just colonize the brain, but spread around and just destroy everything in their path. leaving a lot of death and destruction in their wake. That is what kills 90% of cancers, is that process of metastasis. Unfortunately, most of the research is not focused on that. Most of the research is focused on the genes. And maybe because it's so complicated, that's why people are just shying away from it, or maybe they're not getting enough funding. But the problem that kills people is metastasis. All right, so let's look at some basic things. Every cell, most cells, let's put it that way, most cells in your body, at a certain point, the mechanisms that are triggered. So this is a cell. At a certain point, there's mechanisms that are triggered, beginning with the nucleus. The cell divides into two. This happens every time, all over the body, everywhere, anywhere. Happens continuously, and those cells continue to multiply. That's how you stay alive. Cells divide, they replace old cells. Now, when it comes to cancer, there's a trigger that damages the DNA and the gene, so that process of orderly division is disrupted. And so the cell becomes sick, and then because of the mutation, it now divides and produces sick cells in its own likeness, after its own image, so to speak. But so there are sick cells and they become cancerous cells. Again, the process, there's an initial change or mutation in the genes. They become cancerous cells. These cancerous cells, like I said, do not obey the laws of nature. They just go gangbusters. They multiply, they spread, and then they travel to distant areas. All this used to be animated. So you should have been seeing the cells just flying out of this this big blob of cells. But something happened with our animation, so it's not working like it should. So my apologies. And like I said, the cancer cells can now begin to spread to different organs and different tissues. Again, that is what kills most patients, the metastasis. So the question is, what triggers the change? I have about 10 different things. I started with about 5, then I kept on looking at it, like 6, 7, now I'm looking at 10. Because I can't go over everything now, but bottom line is immune deficiency. If a cancer cell becomes cancerous, the immune system should be able to recognize, identify, and kill it before it becomes a problem. Most of us actually have cancer cells in our bodies, but the reason why it has not developed into a full-blown cancer is because the immune system is working relatively well. So before a cancer cell can eventually become a cancer cell and a cancer tissue, before tissue becomes fully cancerous, that the doctors can recognize is because your immune system has failed to do what it was designed to do. There are other things too, but like infections, we know HIV, AIDS can cause cancer. We know there are certain kinds of peptic ulcer. The H. pylori, which is the infection in peptic ulcer, can eventually cause cancer. I put inflammation here because most of this, that is what results in that's the final common pathway. The cells become inflamed and eventually they become mutated and eventually they spread. Inflammation also encourages the spread of cancer cells. So we need to address that. I have this picture here because if you know what happens next, you probably have gray hair. Those of us who grew up watching Incredible Hulk, Dr. O, I guess that was after your time. But we were this was when I was 8, 9, very young kids. This is when the original Incredible Hulk came out. What we know is that this was what Dr. Banner would say: don't make me angry. You will not like me if I'm angry. And if you keep provoking him, eventually his eyes turn green, and everybody knows that that's the end. Just run away. Don't be around. Boom, just escape. Because once his eyes turn green, the next thing is he becomes what? The Incredible Hulk. And that is what we're trying to avoid in cancer. You don't want your cells to be continually provoked until they turn green and they become cancerous cells. I've divided into 3, like I said before, because it's the genes, the lifestyle, and the environment. We're still trying to figure out the genes. why it is that Black people have they're more predisposed to this. But I can tell you, obesity, the fact that we don't take care of our health like we should, and the fact that we have dark skin. Remember, and I'm going to get to this again, vitamin D is one of the pillars for your health. It is one of the controlling factors, the governing factors of health. It is what is responsible for the development and maturation of your immune system, amongst other things. If your vitamin D levels are deficient or suboptimal, you will not be able to have a well-functioning immune system. And we're seeing that. I wish researchers would talk about this even more. If your vitamin D levels are too low, you may be looking okay, you may feel okay, but your immune system will not work like it should. And over a period of time, because nothing just jumps on you like that, over a period of time, it begins to build and build and build and build. That's related to your genes because you have dark skin. You have your melanin is a lot, so it doesn't help you produce enough vitamin D. Lifestyle again, environment again. I'm going to say a few things about the environment too and toxins. We can talk about poverty, genetics. Okay, I've mentioned that. I've mentioned dense. Yes, another thing, dense breast tissue. If we're talking about breast cancer, Black people tend to have, even though they might not be overweight, but they tend to have more dense breast tissue than others as well. The other thing about risk factors for breast cancer include the fact that if you've never breastfed before, or you don't breastfeed right like you should, I mentioned one of my factors is immobility, when things are not moving like they should. Same thing with prostate cancer. They say more frequent sex has been associated with less prostate cancer. Same thing with breast tissue. If people have not breastfed, fluids get stuck there, they don't flow out like they should. Immobility, stasis can predispose to breast cancer. I think then another one is so we know family history. If your parents have had breast cancer before, or someone in your family has had breast cancer, the important thing is to be alert for this. I think I've mentioned this before. This is a professor of gynecology, OBGYN, who is really trying to get with the Black women. Please, she's telling them, please watch your weight. Please watch your weight. I mentioned vitamin D3 before. I think many of you have seen this picture before. If you haven't, this is a picture of two mice, exactly the same genes from the same parents, born on the same day. The one on the left, they genetically made it so that it cannot produce vitamin D. After a few months, you can see the difference. The one on the left without vitamin D, it looks shriveled, it looks weak, it looks incompetent. I want to say a few things about toxins because you remember from the beginning, I said, you've got to keep your inflammation levels low. There are ways by which they test inflammation. Easy ways they can test them. They're not common tests in the hospitals, but there are organizations that test this. We tend inadvertently to introduce toxins in our bodies without our knowing. And really, in this modern world in which we live, how can we escape it? Everywhere we go, we are exposed to toxins. We put those toxins in our bodies. We breathe those toxins. That's why lung cancer is the #1 killer in the world, because you cannot escape from air, and you breathe in air with all its toxins. So you can only protect yourself and avoid these things so far. It's good for you to know about it so you don't deliberately start putting things in your body that will destroy or destroy your immune system's ability to protect itself. I think I have, so toxins on our bodies. So makeup, unless it's organic, is it? Hair products, hairspray, skin products, deodorants. These are, especially the aluminum ones, deodorants, these are all toxic. They're all things that come with modern day experience, our modern life. Then, of course, processed or unnatural foods are all going to be amongst these things. High levels of sugar. I talk about the 3 whites: sugar, flour, white sugar, white flour, white rice. By the time, ladies and gentlemen, by the time you get to be 30 years of age, the honeymoon period is over. All the wonderful health you're experiencing, if you don't begin to consciously take care of your health, these things will catch up with you. And again, if you're a black person, they will catch up with you faster. The natural forces tend to continue to grow and dominance, help you get good muscle tone, keep you healthy, keep you alive, keep you vigorous, keep your eyes healthy. They tend to work on their own, whatever you do. Even if you abuse your body, they tend to work for you until you get to the age of 30. Then it plateaus. And then everything else will now depend on your genes, your lifestyle, your habits, and your environment. So you want to reduce sugar, you want to reduce flour, you want to reduce rice. These all increase your level of inflammation. And once there's high level of inflammation in your body, it gives cancer the opportunity to spread. Before it spreads, it gives cancer the opportunity to develop. So I'm going to say a few things about prevention and treatments. These are the absolute basics. Food alone is not going to do it. I know people always asking about diets. Listen, folks, unless you're living on a farm in a pristine environment, maybe Iceland or Greenland, where the air is cool and you don't have planes flying over you, and they're not doing GMO or modern day agriculture. That's why you can think that you can even possibly think that you have healthy and balanced diet. Most of the food is not what it used to be 30, 50, 60 years ago when you were younger. Therefore, it is paramount that you understand that the food alone is not going to do it, and therefore you must take supplements. That's my stance. You must take supplements to protect yourself. Vitamin D is an anti-inflammatory. Also, it strengthens the immune system. It actually does all the four things that I mentioned earlier, the four horsemen. Vitamin C has been dubbed the Swiss Army knife of all supplements. A lot of the things that how our bodies work, even with COVID-19, they're beginning to use vitamin C to treat COVID-19 in places like China and New York. It is very important for protection in the lungs. Zinc is very important for the immune system. I also talk about fiber. Fiber is, in my opinion, the most important thing for a healthy digestive system is adequate fiber. That's the most important thing for various reasons that I probably have discussed before. Remember, 70 to 80% of your immune system resides in the gut, the digestive system. And so it's incumbent upon you to ensure that you keep that gut healthy. Again, these are the four horsemen. Where cancer is concerned, your main problem are immune function and inflammation. Got to focus on that. So building upon that, like I said, the vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and fiber are the basic things. If you're concerned about cancer, maybe you've been diagnosed, maybe you've gone to the doctor, you've got to get your treatment from the doctor, follow everything. Maybe you might need to get a second and third opinion. You are working with the right oncologist. But once you are convinced that you need to be treated, you must continue your treatment to get the full range of treatment from your doctor. But here's the thing. The doctor is only going to take care of your cancer. That's his focus. He's not interested in anything else. He's interested in your cancer. Okay, very few. Let's put it that way. Very few are truly interested in strengthening your immune system and in you reducing inflammation. So it's incumbent upon you to take we can talk about stress and sleep and taking care of yourself and all those other things. That's very important. But in addition to that, your body needs the weapons. Your body needs the weapons to fight cancer and to recover. While the chemotherapy and radiotherapy and surgery are doing their thing, you have to strengthen your body, because those same things could actually kill you if you are sufficiently weak. Because chemotherapy kills rapidly dividing cells. Chemotherapy kills cancer cells, but it doesn't just kill cancer cells, it also kills normal cells as well. And so if your body is not producing enough normal cells to make up for that damage, then you have a problem. So I add here that I would strongly recommend And some of them, we use them even with sickle cell disease, like the immune support. You need a potent immune support supplement. Vitamin D and vitamin C are not enough. You need a potent immune support supplement. You need something that is potently addresses inflammation. We know that omega-3s, for instance, high quality omega-3s, and I'll say 95% of what you see in the health food stores of the omega-3s in the health food stores will not do what I'm talking about. You need good digestive support. If possible, I would strongly advise that you even do a colonic. A colonic is a way of which they can flush out the residue in your gut. The colonics can flush out residue in your gut, because what we know is that most people with cancer tend to have constipation, especially when they're going through treatment. And those waste products, if they stay in your gut for too long, they can cause more problems. We know that people who get colonics tend to do better with cancer treatments. So you need good digestive support. There are also now nutraceuticals that actively remove toxins from your body without causing any untoward side effects. So these are the four I would strongly suggest for those who are concerned about cancer or who are actually undergoing cancer treatment. And we do this a lot with our work, both here and back in Nigeria. We're supporting patients back home who have cancer along with their treatment, and we're getting really, really good results. So if you have any questions about that, we can always talk about that later. Again, don't conflate the two. The doctor is going to address your disease. He is not going to start asking you to strengthen your immune system. I've heard someone also talk about, let me see how much time I have left, 24 past. Someone that I deeply respect talk about fasting. They found out that you can actually fasting like 8 hours to 16 hours and just eating what is known as intermittent fasting. Some people even suggest you fast for 2-3 days. It starves the cancer. That's what they found out. It starves the cancer. And it gives the chemotherapy and the other treatments a better chance to recover. All right, I think I've come to the end. Dr. Oh, sorry, I went over like 5 minutes over time, so my apologies. How are we doing?
Fantastic.
All right. So I think I'll pause there and hand over.
Great. Oh my gosh. That was a mouthful. That was a lot. And I have so many questions, but I want to say something first. The first thing I want to say is that obesity in Black women is the fault of Black men. Black men like the robust, big behinds and stuff like that. And so women want to fit that criteria. And there was a time also when big tummy in Black men is evidence of wealth or affluence. Thank God that has changed. Because now I know that in Nigeria and maybe all over Africa, men now go to the gym and exercise and get rid of that big gut. So on a more serious note, obesity is a huge thing. Thank you for mentioning that, but I do have questions. So you said something about potent immune supplements that are more potent than vitamin D and C. And you specifically said you're not talking about those. And by the way, vitamin D is included in fighting COVID with vitamin C, which is great. So you mentioned omega-3 fatty acids. And we know that we can get that in fishes, except for tilapia, that's a bad fish. You cannot get omega-3 there, you'll get omega-6. So what are the other sources of omega-3 fatty acids? Oh, I think Dr. Ajibade dropped off again. Honorable Gustav, I'm going to hang over to you while I fix this problem.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much, Dr. O. You are on the Medical Mondays, and we are talking about cancer and how it affects the Black community so bad. And Dr. David Ajibade has given us some insightful information. The statistics looks gloomy, but there is hope for the future. And of course, it's healthy lifestyle that gives you strong health and strong future. That's our mantra for Medical Mondays with Dr. O.
Dr.
The chat box. Yeah.
Dr. O's question in terms of the other sources of omega-3. Dr. O, the primary and usually helpful source is fish, primarily. Now, the problem with that is that we've been seeing fish which is adulterated. So we are eating fish products which are now either being a farm-fed fish, which is probably the kinds of fish we can get. We should get wild fish only. There might be some available omega-3s in some of the various grains, but it is basically insignificant. So our source of vitamin of omega-3 basically should usually be fish at this point in time, seafood. So that's a good item, and I would stress the use of that. Dr. Gustav, you're actually correct. Health is wealth in terms of maintaining us. He mentioned quality of vitamins. That is absolutely significant because you could walk into a health food store, buy, say, vitamin C, which doesn't serve the body at all. So you need to get the proper kind of, say, vitamin C, just using that in and of itself. Some of these vitamins are chelated in a way that the body never gets them. When I say chelated, they are combined in a fashion, in a pill. We take the pill, but it passes through our body without ever getting to be used at this point in time. There are other questions I have. I'm going to let the open it to the floor, but he mentioned from the beginning sickle cell, critical item. And I would, what I've read is that, in fact, this came out of the WHO, that the #1 country that has the highest amount of sicklers in the world is Jamaica. Now, I know Africa has a significant amount of sicklers, but Jamaica has a large amount of sicklers, but the lowest event of sickling. And why is that? Because they're eating a particular food which stops the aggregation. It keeps the cells apart. And that item in that food is, it's actually called thiosulfate radical. It actually does not allow cells to clump. And it's in the foods that Jamaicans eat. Very interesting.
How do you get that? How do you get the thiosulfate radical?
That is a item that is found in cassava. Cassava is part of the main meal in many of the countries, as in Jamaica. That's part of that's the main item in their meal. It is part of the makeup of the item of the root. They've broken it down. They did the study. It's the thiosulfate radical, and it is the item that prevents clumping. So while they might have the highest sicklers in terms of actual present of people who have sickle cell anemia, they have the lowest sickling rate.
Thank you so much for that. We need to talk more about that, and we need to look into that.
Yes, indeed.
As you know, not enough is what I should say, has been done with sickle cell, and it's the disease of Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Ajibade is on the cutting edge. That's his passion, and this is significant. I wonder if the thiosulfate radical is one of the agents that he's using for sickle cell. I think we should have a sickle cell conversation here on this forum sometime soon, but this month is cancer, breast cancer month, is cancer month. I was thinking we should focus a lot on how to prevent cancer in us, but sickle cell is very important. We will continue to have the dialogue as we go along, maybe in every forum. It's that important.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
So the vitamin C that you were talking about, you're right. I think, says Daisy Jones, just put it on the forum, in the chat. So please, everybody, we can look at the chat. The Emergen C is a good and credible source of vitamin C. Vitamin C's are not made equal. As Dr. Bill just educated us, Emergen C is a good one.
That's because it's buffered, and it gets through our body. Now, there's also, as she said, emergency, which is really pleasant to take. We can take it every day. It's a food item. We take it and we use it, and it's wonderful. Just drink the water to make it be more effective.
And thank you so much. And Dr. Maureen Booker just posted that the first person diagnosed with sickle cell was a Jamaican. I did not know that.
Yes.
So those are important information. Thank you so much, Doc. Dr. Ajibade is back.
Good.
And thank you so much. You know, by the grace of God, you're going to be able to stay on and answer our questions because you are so loaded. I was asking about the omega-3 fatty acid, but Dr. Bill has stepped in to answer that question. I will defer now to Honorable Gustav Ajay to take over questions.
Okay, so there are a couple of questions related to vitamin D. Dr. Dublin says, noted vitamin D deficiency as significant. Would you recommend daily supplement, and what amount is required in Black people?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to leave my video off just so I don't get kicked off again. Yes, Dr. O and I may differ because, like, I come from an environment in which you can't really test vitamin D levels, and in fact, it costs 25,000 naira just for a vitamin D test if you can find it. Even national, I think I checked the National Hospital the other day, and they said they don't even do it. I recommend at least 5,000 international units every single day. We know from Mayo Clinic says that toxicity levels, if you take in, this is what they found out, 60,000 international units a day for a long period of time, over a period of months, is what can result in toxicity. But the consensus is between 5,000 and 10,000. So if you take around that amount, that you're safe, and hopefully your blood levels will be in the optimal range. I take more than that, but that's my personal choice.
Thank you.
What form? D3?
D3, definitely. Do not take D2. Do
That's
not take D2.
Thank you. Yes, we know that. Well, you're right. I am in a place, thank God, in the US where I have the opportunity to easily test for vitamin D levels. So I'm able to follow my patients, but I just learned recently from Dr. Ashby that, you know, while we are looking at 30 to 100 international units being the normal range for vitamin D, actually the normal range is way over 100. So I'm with you, Dr. Ajibade, but I'm with you. I'm going to also, Honorable Gustav, kindly give me, you know, this freedom to ask Dr. V a vitamin D question. She had a question just before we started on vitamin D. Dr. V?
All right, great. I posted it on the chat just in case you only read the ones on the chat. But I immediately stopped using vitamin D the minute I started it, because I read something that said that it was all plasticky and dangerous. Even though my doctor said, oh, vitamin D is good for you, when I read that, I just didn't trust it anymore. So how do you determine what's a safe vitamin D and, of course, the vitamin C? Because now that I've read that they're all plasticky and there's all sorts of stuff, ingredients not safe for us in there, it's concerning. So please help me out. Because I hear you really advocating. I felt like I should eat my vitamins is what I read. The article that I read said, go eat your vitamins versus drinking any bottled vitamin. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. O.
Thank you. Dr. Ajibade.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Question. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. With things like vitamin D and vitamin C, from my experience, and remember, I mean, we are week in, week out, we have kids coming to us with different issues, and especially with sickle cell disease. And to our complete surprise, we found out that even things as simple as vitamin D and vitamin C can help. And the vitamin D, I'm not sure what you mean by ingredients, because vitamin D is pretty much vitamin D. I don't think they add any other thing to it except the gel caps. So we use the gel capsules, and basically I just put it in my mouth and chew it. And I get mine off Amazon, and for less than $10, you can have 5 to 6 months supply of that. So to me, that's a really cheap, low. A cheap price to pay for something that's such a powerful thing. No, I would say get back on vitamin D, D3, not D2, D3, whatever you read. Man.
Well, I would say this. I saw that you said you trying to get vitamin D replacement through diet, and that is fantastic.
Yes.
What foods are rich in vitamin D is the question. Things like mackerel, salmon, and Dr. Bill already, mentioned that you want to do the wild caught salmon, not the farm raised, because that has its own issues.
Right.
The mackerel, salmon, and this.
Flaxseed.
What of the white fish? Like sea bass, all those.
Like what?
The wild fish. Wild white fish.
The fattier the fish, the better the sauce.
Oh.
So the white fish is very delicious and we love it, but it doesn't have much in terms of the source of vitamin D. Back to the quality of the vitamin, they have vitamin D in the marketplace that is esterified. If you ever find a tablet of vitamin D and not the gel capsule, don't buy it.
Oh.
Only the gel capsule, as in Dr. Ajibade basically said at this point. That's what we want. And also, these pills that we take every day are formulated in a way to get past the stomach region. So it can get into the intestines where it will then do us value, as in, again, Dr. Ajibade spoke to in terms of passing, making efficient use of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The question is, how much fish do you need or would you eat to replace your vitamin D? It's going to be a lot. How much flaxseed is going to be? We don't know. You just will not be able to build up that vitamin D. And you can't get enough from the sun because you have that beautiful black skin that shields you from the sun and gives you some protection against skin cancer. The melanin does, and so you can't get it from the sun. The best thing is to replace it. Please start taking the vitamin D again, but as you heard, only the gel capsule vitamin D. We take tablets. They have fillers. Any tablet you take have fillers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It is the fillers that makes it into the pills, the capsules, or whatever you take.
Yeah.
So the source you read is not authentic, is not adequate, is not the right one.
Thank you so much. My Health 101 class. Thank you.
Doc, if I may just say something about, please, I really feel we need to sound a note of caution where fish is concerned. As Dr. O has mentioned, it's highly unlikely you're going to get your vitamin D levels by, you have to take a lot of fish. But in the process, you've got to remember too that a lot of this fish, the fish, especially the fatty fish, have toxins in them. The mere fact that they have fat means that they concentrate toxins. Now, if you can get it from not the farm fresh, but the wild Alaskan salmon, for instance, which, as we all know, is super expensive. You can't keep taking that every single day. We're talking about a way in which you can consistently, or the way you should consistently put vitamin D in your body. It's not, you're not going to eat you're not going to eat a wild Alaskan salmon every single day. You're not going to take cod every single day. I think we need to work, again, because I'm coming from a Nigerian environment where we're dealing with the basics, the absolute basics. I tend to think in terms of those things. Not everybody has the ability to eat all those great fish every single day. So supplementation to me is the most practical way of getting it done.
Agreed.
Agreed. Honorable Gustav, over to you. While it's getting ready.
Yeah, muted.
Thank you so much. There's a question, say, please, is magnesium and zinc also good to be taken as part of supplements for our immune system?
Dr. Ajibade.
Oh, yes, definitely. Zinc, and zinc for sure. Zinc is the most important, is known as the most important supplement, mineral, for the immune system. Zinc is. Yes, and it's also very important for the brain. Now, the challenge is getting the right kind. Some have argued that the picolinate or some other factors, and you remember these are common tablets, and like Dr. O said, they have a lot of fillers in them. But I would rather take those than be left without it. Magnesium is good for pretty much everything, from what I've seen, and you need about 400 milligrams. The big four, in my opinion, are magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, and vitamin C. Those are the big four that you want to make sure that you get enough supplementation on.
Abby says, African women usually breastfeed their infants. Do this help prevent cancer later in life?
African American, the African women, yes, but the research says that African American women tend not to breastfeed like they should. So yes, I mean, the natural way to help you breastfeed regularly, it has been associated with less risk of having breast cancer. It's not an absolute guarantee against it, obviously, but it seems like it helps.
Well, it is.
Thank you.
It is good because when you breastfeed, you are transferring to the infant the immune factor that the mother has, and it actually provides the bifida, which is a wonderful item in terms of supporting the child's growing immune system. So yes, it is absolutely wonderful to breastfeed, and yes, it's true. African American women are less likely to breastfeed. Why, I don't know. Maybe Dr. O can speak to that in terms of what's going on. But anyway.
I can just say that, now we have breastfeeding clinics. We encouraging women, especially African Americans, to breastfeed. So that's all I can say, that we're trying and we're educating so that, women will breastfeed generally. Yeah.
Dr. Caprice want to know if late pregnancy after 35-year-old is a risk factor.
Risk factor for cancer?
Yes, I guess. Dr. Caprice, you can clarify that.
Dr.
Yeah.
C?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Dr. Ajibade?
You know, what I found out is that those who do not, let me see how I've forgotten how they put it now, but late pregnancy. Honestly, I'll have to be frank with you. I'm not certain about that, but there's something about
late pregnancy, no. However, no pregnancy.
No pregnancy. Mm-hmm.
No pregnancy. A woman who has never been pregnant, who has never had a child, it is possible that there is increased risk of uterine cancer, breast cancer. Dr. Ajibade, you actually alluded to that in your presentation when you talked about the stimulation of the breasts as to prevent, cancer from breastfeeding. When you breastfeed, you actually have lesser chance of, developing cancer later on.
Yeah.
So not late pregnancy, but no pregnancy.
No pregnancy. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. O and Dr. Ajibade. Dr. Bill, you can come in.
Sorry?
Dr. Bill wants to ask a question.
In terms of the breast cancer, Dr. Ajibade, have you discovered or read anywhere about the process that women shave their underarms, they excoriate that tissue, they open that tissue, and then they use the worst thing in the world to give them the protection of, as in a deodorant that has a +3 mineral in it, which is toxic to our body, as in aluminum. And right. I believe in Europe, they've done much study about that. We've tried to bring it here, but we don't really even bring it forward because of the marketplace wants to sell these deodorants at this point. But an aluminum-based deodorant is treacherous in terms of what it does to a woman and a man, because men are doing it as well now. It just opens up the chest cavity for infection because it actually anesthetizes the lymph tissue that goes through the chest.
Absolutely, that's a great point. I mentioned some about that too in terms of when I was talking about the different unnatural things that we put on our bodies, the hairspray, the aluminum. Yes, that's. I think you said so that some countries that are banning aluminum in their deodorants because that's it's exactly such a toxic, such a toxic compound.
Yes,
that can be cancerogenic. Yeah. So our recommendation is to avoid. There are now deodorants that do not contain aluminum, so that would be something to be a preference.
You have to find it. You have to look for it.
Look for it. Yeah. And they tend to be more expensive.
This is the one Donna is using for her Alexa. Oh yeah.
I keep muting. Denike, kindly stay muted.
Really. The reason why in my other houses I have just the table.
Kindly stay muted. Dr. Adenike, please stay muted. Thank you. Dr. Ajagbe has his hands raised. Dr. Ajagbe, sir. And then Dr. Oduyebo had his hands raised and then put it down. And we have a brother, we were in Jamaica together, Mr. Akin Babalola, and then Opeyemi. So Dr. Ajagbe, please ask your question.
Well, I just want to make some comments. The first one is regarding the sources of omega-3 for people from West Africa or Africa generally. I think one of the main sources is the mackerel, because there's mackerel everywhere. Even since when I was growing up in Nigeria, I know almost everywhere you go, you find the mackerel type of fish, very affordable, and people eat it every day in every form. making stew with it, making it smoked. Some buy it fried. In fact, I was talking to one of one of my old classmates way back in elementary school, said that if you didn't eat fried fish head, you know, when you are growing up, you haven't really had a good time in primary school. So I knew that for a fact that it was very affordable, and it's still affordable now in Nigerian market. The other thing I wanted to address, you know, kind of a comment, the issue of breastfeeding is central to the well-being, not just of the mother, but of the offspring. We have discovered that the shrinking jaws is linked to the lack of breastfeeding. So if you look in the West African, in the American population, you find out that over 74% of American adults has one form of jaw deformity or another. That's a very high number. And also, if you look at children growing up now, all around you, you find out almost 60% of the children in America are wearing braces, even as early as 7 years old, you know, and even some people, you know, if it's very severe, they have it very early. And this is the reason why breastfeeding cannot be overemphasized. We need to encourage women to do this, not only because it is beneficial to them in preventing cancer, but it's also the central role for normal development of children that will prevent future chronic problems. I think I will address some other issue, you know, with Dr. Ajibade of the phone. But I just want to say that everything we are talking about regarding cancer is very important, not just for the mother, but also for the children.
Thank you, Dr. Jagbe. Mr. Akin Babatola, sir. Nice to have you on the forum.
It's nice to.
We're in Jamaica together.
Yes, and I thank you for the time in Jamaica. I really appreciate the company and all that.
And thank you for saving my phone in Jamaica with the desiccants that you brought all the way from the US when my phone was into water.
Some other time we'll talk about what, I think that was a scam anyway, but I will explain all that to you subsequently.
Okay,
but
thank
first, I want to thank you and all the bright people who've congregated here and for the initiative and for the sustenance of this program. It's exceedingly commendable, the effort, the time, the dedication, and the draw. And in particular, this month, you're focused on cancer and all that. As must be transparent to all of you, much of what is being said is a bunch of generalizations, most of it positive, not all of it accurate. And so I'm just going to focus specifically on the differential, the racial differential on cancers, breast cancer specifically, and the Black woman. And many of the anecdotes that have been discussed specifically have now focused on the differential on breastfeeding. It is clear that if you did any critical analysis of what the breast cancer incidence rates are, that it is not hooked in any statistically significant way to breastfeeding. Here's the simplest way to see it. If you're a Black woman, whether you're in America or in Africa, you have a statistically significant incidence rate for breast cancer. So if you control for breastfeeding, you're going to find that by and large, the African woman statistically significantly breastfeeds more than the African woman in America. And yet, they still, relative to other races, uniformly have higher incidence rates. So it's good to learn these anecdotes, and anecdotes being what they are, they're going to be useful in some instances, and they're not going to be particularly useful in other instances. And people might walk away discouraged. And I've seen that a lot. I started seeing that in graduate school. I did a year of molecular oncology. And it's easy to get carried away when you do not look at the genetic and epigenetic, that some of these things are not controllable with these anecdotal pieces. More than anything else, they can discourage people who have limited resources. I think it's great that many of you are medical doctors, because I think you have resources, and I think you're going to be able to coach people with resources. But I also encourage you to be mindful that there are people, and perhaps they're not invited to this forum. I do not know the composition here. But if they were, if they walk away with, oh, it's people who do not breastfeed that they're going to discourage, because the reality is, the most significant differential in many of these cancers, whether colorectal cancers, for instance, among the Caucasians, breast cancer among Black women, or even breast cancer among Black men, has nothing to do with breastfeeding. It's mostly genetic. But thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment. And it's very important that we don't let people walk off with, misconceptions. I don't think it's been said that breastfeeding, single-handedly protects against cancer. In the presentation that we saw, Dr. Ajibade talked about different things. Immune system is one of them. And, everybody who is a scientist knows that breastfeeding, when you breastfeed your child, you, especially in those first 6 months, you actually, confer immunity to them. It's definitely better than formula-fed babies. And that's why we are advocating in medicine for women to breastfeed. It's just for the immune system and a lot of other things that, it's not the conversation of tonight, but we advocate it. It was just a segment. And yes, genetics play a big role in breast cancer in particular, the BRCA1 and 2 genes. Yes, but correct. There's what? People get cancers today that have no genetic basis. Not all breast cancer is genetically based or caused by genetics. And I think he alluded to that in his talk also. So because people are asking questions on breastfeeding, they needed to be answered. Is the answers that, they were given. So they were just answers to the questions that are asked. Asked if you should breastfeed or not breastfeed, please, in the name of God, we beg you to breastfeed. So thank you so much, though, for your observation.
Unfortunately, I couldn't breastfeed even if I wanted to.
Thank you for the observation. We want to send clear messages. Thank you. Dr. Ademola.
Good evening, and thank you for this forum. My question specifically goes to genetics and partially answered by the last speaker. With due respect, I wanted to know more about cancer in general and the predisposition of cancer activation to family history, which is considered genetics. Genetics is a very broad-based science. Also, so much research has been done on cancer, and especially colon cancer, that polyps are found and how frequently should one go for re-examination after polyps have been found in the colon? Thank you.
Dr. Ajibade has dropped off.
I think we lost him again.
Okay, it's coming back in. What was the last part of your question about the polyps?
That when polyps is found in the colon and removed, how frequently should one return to assessment of the colon to prevent cancer death? Because I'm not going to say that they're not going to grow back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent questions. Well, we know the significance of genes in breast cancer. Just to allude to that again, we know women who, because they have those genetic basis for breast cancer, that decide to do mastectomy, that is, just remove the breast so that they prevent the incidence in themselves. And they do that prophylactically, meaning that they don't have cancer yet, but they know they have the predisposition because of their genes. And so they would do that to prevent cancer. Your other question about polyps in the colon, when GI doctors do colonoscopy and find polyps, they take it out immediately. That's a cure. The polyp that has been taken out at that point in time is been taken out. So they send it to pathology. Pathology will now read, they dissect it, they figure out what kind of polyp it is. Some polyps are benign, meaning they were not going to go anywhere. Some polyps would become cancer. So depending on the kind of polyp, the GI doctor will recommend the next time for colonoscopy. Normally, if there are no polyps in the colon, colonoscopy is done every 10 years. But if somebody has polyp, they can be told to come back in 3 years, in 5 years for repeat colonoscopy. And you know what? My experience, what I've seen, but over 90% of them would have polyps when they go back for repeat colonoscopy. Those polyps would have grown back and they will take them back again. I have a patient who the GI doctor has been seeing every year. He has polyps in every segment of his colon. And every year, now for the past, it's been 3 years, they still keep removing polyps. So it depends on the kind of polyp, and it depends on, the pathology. And the GI doctor makes their recommendations based on that. Since we're talking of polyps, there's also uterine polyps, that is polyps in the uterus of women that will also grow into cancer. I tell my women, if they are after menopause, that is post-menopause, they're not having menstrual cycles anymore, and they have, even brown discharge, it's not even quite blood yet, I send them to gynecologists for evaluation. And if anything is fine, my recommendation is that they should just take, the uterus, the ovaries, they should take them out. Because then, just like people who have the prophylactic, so to say, mastectomy, it's like the same thing. If you're not having children anymore, you're not menstruating anymore, there's no reason to keep something that would potentially cause you problems in the future. Thank you for the question. So there was somebody else who raised their hand, but I don't know, maybe they dropped off. So Honorable Gustav, over to you.
Yes, there's a follow-up question on the colon polyp from Clementina. And she had an adenomatous polyp removed, had to do colonoscopy every 3 years. And second time I had a lymphoma. So another 3 years after the clean one, I am now on every 5 years.
Wow. Thank you so much, because That's exactly that's exactly how it works, and the GI doctors make that determination. And I want to really, really thank you and compliment you for having your colonoscopy done to start off with. You won't believe how long I spent with some of my patients, explaining, and encouraging them to have colonoscopy. For whatever reason, African Americans don't like to have colonoscopy. Africans don't like to have colonoscopy. I still don't get it. It's a procedure that you clean out. You have laxatives clean out overnight. I tell my patients, since I've had a couple done, I think the most difficult part of the procedure is that cleansing period when you stay up all night and you're on the commode all night. But then you go in the morning, you sleep for, the whole thing is less than 30 minutes for the GI doctor to go through your rectum and go all the way through the colon to make sure that it's clean, there's nothing there. And if there are polyps, they get removed. It's a care, and then they will make the determination as we've discussed on the next time. Mr. Opeyemi Adewale has been raising his hands. He put it down, but now he's back. Please unmute and ask your question.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Ajibade, for the presentation. And I would like to also thank Dr. O for this great platform created. When I just want to make a comment with respect to the issue of the issue of the genetics, lifestyle, and environment. I begin to understand that most of our training, especially the doctors' training, especially in this part of Nigeria, is based on, we are not really trained in terms of prevention, so to speak, and this prevention is the key now with the burdens of some of all these chronic diseases. And I want to ask, with respect to the issue of lifestyle now, because lifestyle, behavioral changes, they've contributed to all these chronic diseases, especially the cancer. What are the roles of antimicrobials? The reason why I'm asking that is because they have found out that gut health, what we take in also affects the kind of disease that somebody come up with, irrespective of a particular medication or supplement that we take. So the role of antimicrobial, I would like us to just look at it. The second thing that I want to mention is on the issue of especially here in Nigeria, the presentation. When people present is one of the major drawbacks in the management of cancer in this population, because a patient that is coming at stage 3 or stage 4 cancer, for example, there's nothing much that could be done, and then lack of access or behavioral lack of education towards these diagnosis is one of a major drawback. So I would like to ask on that aspect. In Nigeria, I don't know how much diagnosis. Which diagnosis is there a general investigation that you want to do to assess the tendency of somebody developing maybe a particular cancer generally, and lastly is on the issue of oral health. I know on this platform, Professor Ajagbe has talked advocating for people should take their oral health very, very seriously. As Dr. Ajibade rightly said, inflammation is one of the major things that contribute to cancer development. And somebody getting to assess his oral health is one of the way of reducing the inflammation as far as the management is concerned. But I don't know why most of the time oral health is not usually a major component. They don't refer to it. And those are the things I want to say because for the sake of time, the issue of the survivorship, I think we need to be thinking about something about it, because if we know that it affects more black people and more black people die for it, I think it's high time we advocate how more people will be survived for cancer cases. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, those are
sit down. Dr. Ajibade, I'm going to defer to you to answer as many as you can of them.
I think those are very, very good points, Mr. Akwemi. I did mention this earlier, but I actually started my career as a radiation oncologist in training at a national hospital, which was at that time the premier, the number one cancer treatment center in Nigeria. We had all the top-notch equipment. And yes, most of our patients were presenting very, very late. And even though we did what we could for them, but that was a major problem. So yes, I totally agree with you that there should be more enlightenment and more awareness about it in a way that they can intelligently act upon it. I forgot to mention during the program that as a way of prevention, if it's something like breast cancer, for instance, women should maintain the habit of doing their daily or monthly checks, check their breasts, get familiar with their breasts, consistency and contour and shape and size and all that, so they will be quick to notice anything different. But the general principles for detecting if you have cancer is basically, again, you need to have that high degree of suspicion. Ideally, in a developing country or developed countries, ideally you should be having that annual physical to catch these things in time. But I'm surprised to hear Dr. O say that even Black people here don't like doing colonoscopies, even if it's available, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, most Black people, most of us back home don't have access to it. So it's. I mean, I guess if we did, we probably would still be hesitant to take it. Kind of like we're hesitant to go to see the psychiatrist for any problem, lest we be branded psycho. So it's an issue. I see it's an issue that is built or etched in our genes because it expresses itself worldwide wherever we are. Back to your own personal responsibility. If you begin to notice changes, whether in your urine or whether in a swelling or a swelling that was there before and is now taking on a different characteristic, maybe it was a soft swelling on your skin and then it becomes harder, or it changes color, or you begin to lose weight for whatever reason, and you know it's not tuberculosis or any of the other infectious diseases. These are all things. It all comes back down to awareness and education, quite frankly. Awareness and education. But over here in the US, it's like people are primed to look out for cancer. Just primed. I think amongst us, we are primed to fear that, it can't be. It's not my portion. And so even if the thought comes, it's like, no, it can't be. So you don't really want to go and check to see whether or not it's a case. So I think that's very important. A very good point about oral health. I do mention it in a lot of my presentations. Oral health is super important because the bacteria that can cause damage, the most damage, some people say are in the teeth and the gums to the rest of the body. They can cause increased inflammation in the body. They can cause damage to the blood vessels. the worst and probably most dangerous bacteria lie in the gums and in dirty, bad dental hygienic places. And so they can go directly into the bloodstream and straight to the heart, and then begin to wreak their havoc in the blood vessels and in the brain and so on and so forth, and eventually can cause cancer. Don't ask me how, but it happens. Same thing with gut health. I like that you mentioned it. I'm very, very big on gut health because a large population of my patients are children with autism. And with autism, if you can't get gut health right, yeah, you can forget it. If you can't clean up their gut and get their gut as healthy as possible, then you can forget it. You're not going to make any progress. The same thing with cancer and pretty much any other disease. I mentioned it during my talk that you've got to take care of the gut because 70 to 80% of the immune system is in the gut. So if your gut is unhealthy, if you're constantly putting toxins in your gut, and by the way, toxins in the bloodstream can eventually get excreted into the gut as well. So the gut tends to, if you're not aware of this, I just keep on putting all kinds of bad stuff in your body, junk food, sugary stuff, and you're constipated or you're not going to the bathroom like you should, there's a lot of junk and toxins that tend to accumulate in your gut, shutting down your immune system and can cause eventually set you up for things like cancer and other kinds of diseases. So gut health is super important.
Oh, thank you so much. All I'm going to add to that is that, here you talked about, is there a way to screen for these cancers? We are blessed in the United States because we do have tests that are tumor markers that, for some cancers that, we can do. Even your CBC, can give you inclination into something like leukemia, just CBC. We have CEA, and all these other markers that we do so easily here. Like Dr. Ajibade said, our people will say it's not my lot in Jesus' name, and they even refuse testing. So we have a lot to learn. Colon cancer that we just talked about, we used to start it at the age of 40 to screen here. We used to start colonoscopy at the age of 50 rather, I'm sorry. But now, because of the increased incidence of colon cancer, the age to start now is 45. It's recommended that we start at 45 instead of 50. So we have a lot to do in Africa, and it will take all of us. Dr. Okweyemi is going to take all of us, all hands on deck, all of us doctors in the diaspora, people who are interested. We're going to need to get together and, have facilities where people can have access to preventive care. Preventive care is the way to go. It's not a good thing to wait to have disease entities and then try to treat. We don't do as well in medicine there, but we do very well preventing. And we have ways to do that. So I think we should talk more about that and see what we can do positively and on ground to effect that. So, Honorable Gustav, please. We have a lot of questions on the floor.
Great information, useful information, and insightful presentation. That's what you get on the Medical Mandates. Now, Dr. Flo wants to know about the use of flavones in fighting cancer.
I mean flavonoids or
flavones? Yeah.
Flavones. Well, those are the general categories of phytochemicals. So phytochemicals are primarily detoxification. They are plant products, extracts from plants that help to detoxify and helps in some way to also help to stimulate and strengthen the immune system. They help, but I alone, I would caution against simply using them alone in your treatment with cancer, for cancer treatment.
There's another question. How about managing cancer if and when one gets it? And how can one prevent inflammation of the gut or colon from becoming cancerous?
When they say inflammation of the gut or colon, has that been diagnosed? Okay, well, let me try and just give a general answer. I mentioned in my talk that among the most important things you can do for your gut is to take fiber. Start with a high fiber diet, but also I strongly recommend things like psyllium husk. This does a couple of things, including helping to move things through the gut. I mentioned that in one of the slides, mobility, when things are not moving, when things are static. This applies across the board, even in life or your environment. If the gutter or the drainage isn't working like it should and things become stagnant, what happens? Bad microbes, mosquitoes, bad bugs begin to multiply. The thing begins to smell. It causes problems. The gut is one of the dirtiest, if not the dirtiest part of your body. And there are extremely toxic substances that are produced from the activity of microbes and even that your body's normal digestion of food. They produce a ton of different kinds of chemicals that are just sitting there in the gut. That's why it's so important that you have regular movement. If you're not moving, if you are like 2-3 days without movement, that can predispose to inflammation and toxicity. So what the fiber does is that fiber helps to move things. Fiber also helps to trap toxins. It attracts and traps the toxins and gets them out of there. The other, and probably the most important thing it does, is that it feeds the good bacteria. It feeds the probiotics, and probably you've heard about that before. When you feed the probiotics, the good bacteria are so important for so many things, including immune function. So the healthier your good bacteria are, the healthier your immune system will be. So fiber is so important. Now, on top of that, those are basic things. Again, I always refer to the vitamin C and zinc. Those are also very important for the gut. On top of that, if you are concerned about toxicity or you had issues with your digestion, there are also nutraceutical supplements that can help to trap and remove heavy metals and other toxins from the gut. And it also helps with the cleaning up of the gut. Well, so that would be my answer for now, Dr. O.
Dr. Gustav, Honorable Gustav. Next question. You're muted. Honorable
So much. Dr. Bill, the nutrition expert, says that good source of flavonoids is the white pulp of an orange. Fiber is excellent as long adequate fluid is consumed. Otherwise, flatulence develops. Colon cancer, when caught early, is one of the few CAs that has a high curable rate. Now let's go back to some of the questions. And I have one from Tei Doherty. He says, is there a non-invasive way to perform colonoscopy?
There is. We have Cologuard now. Cologuard uses this tool. It is different from what we used to do before. Before, they test this tool in the lab for blood. And then if there's blood, then, we suspect there may be cancer. Cologuard is different. Cologuard actually tests this tool and uses DNA. It tests the DNA basically of colon cancer and can tell if somebody has polyps that will become cancer or has cancer. The patient I told you about why it's testing every year. I have begged him, he's been my patient for years, to do colonoscopy and he refused. Then we got Cologuard. So I had struck a bargain with him to do the Cologuard, and if it's positive, then he would do colonoscopy. He agreed, and he did. You wouldn't believe it. He has cancerous polyps, like in almost all the colonic segments, and is doing colonoscopy every year now because of that. So yes, we do. We have Cologuard now.
Thank you so much for the information. There is another question that says, how much is too much vitamin C?
Okay. The standard recommendation is 90 milligrams. In my opinion, that is terribly low. That is just to prevent you from having scurvy. And I think that applies across the board. Many times they just recommend the basic minimum to keep you from disease, not to trigger optimize your health. And that's the challenge I have with many of these recommendations. I guess you might have guessed that from now that I'm not a big fan of the standard recommendations. So the good thing about vitamin C, and I've had a lot of experience with vitamin C because again, I use it for as one of the primary treatments with my children, the children with autism, because they all have bad guts. I use it to try and to provoke evacuation of the gut. Let's put it that way. The standard recommendation is 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams. The more enlightened recommendation, 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams. However, I would recommend that you get the powder, not the tablets. And when you get the powder, you want to put it in a bottle of water or a glass of water, and you drink it not at once, but over a period of time, probably 6 to 8 hours. So you just have it by your side and just drink it. That's where your body is making use of it as it needs it. The challenge of just taking a tablet that is 500 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram is that the body just takes a little bit and it pees out the rest. It never really takes much of it at all. And that's why they keep on using some expensive urine. Now, some people may need more than 1 gram. Some people can go as much as 5, 6, 7, 9 grams, 10 grams. But here's the thing. The body has a way of getting rid of the excess. So if your body needs 5 grams and you give it 6 grams, the body will actually triggers diarrhea and your body can get rid of that extra 1 gram. So the rate limiting step is if it gets too much for the body gets rid of it. Now, having said that, I have to sound a note of caution. There's a remote possibility, very remote from what I've seen, very remote possibility that some people may develop kidney stones with excess vitamin C, may develop kidney stones as a result of the oxalates that are created. But I've listened to nephrologists and other cardiologists who are very big on vitamin C, and nephrologists, by the way, are those who treat kidney disorders. And they have said that it's a very, very distant possibility. It's not as common as many times people tend to say. So I would recommend 1 to 2 grams of vitamin C a day. Put it in a bottle and do not drink it at once. Sip it over a period of time.
Thank you so much for that information. I have another question. It says, is there a link between the kitchen tools we use like pots and cancer? That is, if we use it and the heat, could it leak into the food and cause cancer? Let's say like the aluminum pots.
That's a good question. So again, it goes back to toxins. With advancement in technology and in every area, the number one thing, health is not the priority. Unfortunately, whether it's making cell phones more effective, or whether it's GMO or crops, making them more resistant to pesticides and to insects. With all the advancements that we're enjoying in this modern world, they are not doing these things with health in mind. So yes, there are pots most of the pots that are being made, the non-stick frying pans and the non-stick pots, they are not, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. They tend to, when you cook with them, they tend to release toxins and heavy metals into the food that you eat, which again underscores the need for you to take supplements, and if you're concerned about it, things that can help to remove heavy metals from the body.
One of the issues, if I may add, one of the issues about aluminum pots came in maybe at the end of the Second World War, because iron was being used for weaponry. So we actually invented aluminum pots. And yes, they do at some a point supply us with aluminum, which is toxic to our bodies. And now you have these non-stick entities, which are now flooding the marketplace. But many of them have something called PFOAs, which are extraordinarily toxic to our bodies. They're plastic entities, which now allow food to slide out of the pan. If we go back to our original eating, our ancestry used the iron pot, the cast iron pot to cook with. And if you can get it, go back to it. But even that, of course, needs to be used properly and cleaned properly, so that we're not scraping off iron as we are basically taking our food off out of the pot. But the aluminum pots, truthfully, are probably the worst things, but the other ones, the PFOA ones, aren't any better. So you're absolutely correct, doctor. Again, find something better to use with and follow.
Oh my God. So how do one know the PFO ones? Because we all are purchasing the non-stick.
It will say on the pot either the absence of statement saying this does not have PFOA is what we look for. We look for the statement to say a PFOA is not part of the coating. If it's not there, that means it's in the coating. Sometimes the absence of the word is as important as the presence.
Okay. Good point.
Okay. Yeah, good point. And thank you for your post on the in the chat rather, where you talked about the water solubility of vitamin C for the last question. So we don't test or screen for or follow vitamin C level like we do vitamin D, because it's water soluble and you urinate it out. So it's recommended that you drink it all day long, like Dr. Ajibade rightfully said.
That powdered form, someone mentioned the Emergen C. That is the powdered form, but it's the buffet form of C, which is good for us because it has the minerals in it, which allow the acidic entity not to disturb our system, and we can then use it properly. The other powdered form, they have it, ascorbic acid is available in the marketplace. Ascorbic acid is vitamin C at this point. And you have to watch out for that, because some of those teaspoonsful of that might be 5,000, 8,000 milligrams of vitamin C. That might be too much. And as Doctor pointed out, it might even create diarrhea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ayodele wants to know if those who marry at 40 are at risk of breast cancer.
Oh, you know what? Dr. Cap sent me something on that I'd like to read on a question that was asked before. Pregnancy is one factor that is known to influence the chances of a woman developing breast cancer. Women who become pregnant and have children at an early age have a decreased risk of developing breast cancer in later life. However, any pregnancy after age 35 increases the risk of breast cancer. And this is from NIH. So late pregnancy by NIH increases BRCA. I don't see how that is, because BRCA is a genetic thing. You don't develop BRCA. It's a gene, but it says increases. I think it increases breast cancer. Is what this is, not BRCA gene. So late pregnancy by NIH. That is what NIH found in research, increases breast cancer at an older age. After age 35, breast tissue is more likely to have accumulated cells carrying cancer, causing mutations or clusters of abnormal cells with the potential to become cancerous. However, it was not known how these cells were affected by a late age forced pregnancy. So for whatever that is worth, NIH thinks that there's an association with breast cancer and late pregnancy, is the summary of what I just read.
If I may add this to Doc, I think too that I don't think we should get hung up on the marriage age or the pregnancy age or and all that. Yes, there are associations, they're not direct causes, in my opinion. The key thing is that people should really be aware. Speaking to this person who is concerned about the 40-year-olds, whether that's for themselves or somebody else. The key thing is that you need to be aware that as a Black woman, you're more likely to have breast cancer than any other person, any other woman of any other race. And as a Black man, you are more likely to have breast cancer, prostate cancer than any other race, and even colon cancer as well, much higher among Black people. So that's why you need to start taking these proactive steps to reduce it. Don't pray and wait and hope that it's not going to come. There are some things that you have learned to do from this program that you should start doing. They are cheap enough to start doing. There are some basic things that I would strongly encourage you that when you leave, you should do these things so that you can reduce that risk, those risk factors. I personally don't. I think you have more control than you believe you do if you start taking the right steps and start learning and reading about this for yourself.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. There's a question in the chat says, please, is it normal to see some breast milk 4 years after breastfeeding?
Dr. O, that's for you.
Normal to do what?
Is it normal to see some breast milk 4 years after breastfeeding?
Oh, no, it is not normal. And it may be something that I've seen this in practice, and after all evaluation and all, it was nothing to do. That may not be breast milk. That may have to do with thyroid problem. We see this also in thyroid problem. So it's important that is evaluated. If somebody is seeing breast milk or what looks like milky discharge in the breast 4 years after breastfeeding, you need to see a doctor and you need to get evaluated. Thyroid problem would be my top thing to rule out.
Dr. Capri says over 80% of women with breast cancer not genetic. Now,
Yeah.
Abby wants to know, are polyps in the colon same as inflammation of the colon?
No, they're not the same.
No.
Totally different.
What is the difference?
Oh, polyps are growths in the colon that can be benign or they can be cancerous, depending on what kind of polyp. Inflammation in the colon can lead to, what we call Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. It's a different process.
Thank you so much for the information. Abby again says, should anyone with ulcerative colitis use vitamin C as they are already with diarrhea-like symptoms?
That's a great question.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Ajibade.
Yeah, and I'm sure Dr. Bill, I would like to hear your view on that. But there's also what is known as non-acidic vitamin C, which is like a bicarbonate that is more expensive. But in fact, that's the one I use in large amounts for my kids with autism to stimulate evacuation of the gut. So that would be less stressful, less harsh on the gut. So for those who have sensitive guts or inflammation or bowel disease, you can gently ease into the using the non-acidic vitamin C.
I would add to that. Actually, I would use the term, as opposed to non-acidic, I would use the term vitamin C, and that's the vitamin C that is actually hooked in with calcium, calcium ascorbate, which anyone can buy in the marketplace. It's available. But more important than that, I would absolutely advise or suggest they speak to their gastro, sure that they're not doing any fibrous entity. Also, colitis is present and they're having issues right now. They have to immediately change that diet and or find out what is creating the condition of the colitis. Just having it from somewhere comes from something. We don't just assume it's there and just leave it alone. But it is the fiber which needs to be managed. Stay away from all acidic entities, as in orange juice or things like that. Vitamin C is definitely needed, but it should be only in the buffered form, which is calcium ascorbate. And that's an easy thing to find out there. So I agree with you totally, Tom.
Would you call so there's also sodium buffered with sodium, isn't there?
There are several items out there that buffer the C. They have the gluconate radical, which will buffer the C. They have other, I'm not certain of the sodium ascorbate in this term, which you're speaking to, but you have magnesium ascorbate out there as well. So there are several forms of a buffered C that people can take. Actually, it's a good option whether you have ulcerative colitis or not. Again, someone mentioned the Emergen C. That is a buffered C item, but it also has other things in it which give it a fizz, which I wouldn't recommend for someone with colitis at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bill. Thank you, Dr. Ajibade, I should say. Dr. O, time for?
Well, before we go to the Medical Mondays moment, I wanted to say that Dr. Ajibade, by popular demand, I've been getting text messages. You can see I'm smiling. Our audience is asking you to please come back next week. And I have to move someone. So give me your answer in a few minutes. Give me the yes answer in a few minutes. So I have a question for Dr. Ajibade, and Dr. Ajibade has been raising his hands for a while. We had lots of questions. We want to answer all of it. And the question is, Dr. Ajibade, when you talked about the jaw at a time, see, let me explain this. On Medical Mondays, you can ask any question, even if it's for something from the past. If our speaker then is on the forum, they'll answer the question. You can see Dr. Bill today, very active because this is his forte. And Dr. Ajibade, when you talked about the jaw with breastfeeding, the question is, when you're talking the jaw of the baby being properly formed when a woman breastfeeds, were you talking about the milk causing that or the sucking action of the process?
Well, that's a very, very important question that's been asked. It is both, actually. The calcium in the breast milk is important for the growth of the baby. But if the baby cannot get the milk from the breast milk, then the calcium is not available for the baby to develop strong bones. during that stage of development. However, the main crux of the presentation, that I alluded to in my presentation, has to do with the development of the jaw and the mouth structures. The most important being the tongue, because you need the tongue for the suction of the milk, and then the lips. They are very important tissues around the jaw bones. The soft tissue actually follow the bone. If the bone is poorly formed, the soft tissue will not be fully developed as well. So most of the babies that are having jaw problems now are children that definitely, even if they had been breastfed, were not completely breastfed. They might have been breastfed partially, less than even the bottle feeding actually. And so when the jaw bones are not fully developed, there will be no sufficient space for the tongue to occupy. And some of these children will actually have what we call the tongue tie. The tongue tie is as a result of poorly developed lower jaw, which is the mandible. The lower jaw is where the tongue is attached. And if the lower jaw is not fully formed, the tongue will not be developed. And that all of those are surrounding the function, the action of sucking the breast, which is not the same as sucking on the nipple of a feeding bottle. I don't know if that answers the question, but that it's basically the center of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ajibade.
One quick question to that.
Go ahead, sir.
Has the prenatal condition entered into the child having any kind of issue in terms of jaw, in terms of bone, in terms of anything? Has the process of coming forward in terms of the mother not doing the proper things, calcium consumption, not taking a prenatal vitamin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that was the beginning of my presentation when I did. I started from prenatal, that if everything works well during the prenatal, the baby will be born full term, and there'll be no problem with development if the baby was breastfed. Then I took the a corollary to that and say, okay, well, let's say the mother did not have enough nutrition during pregnancy, particularly if a mother was highly deficient in folic acid. It's been associated, actually, it's been found to be directly correlated to the formation of spina bifida or anencephaly. Which means the spinal cord is exposed or the brain is exposed, and the same structure that developed into the brain and the spinal cord is where the structures for the jaws and the face and the structures of the mouth were formed from.
Wow.
So when anything that affects the development of the spinal cord and the brain, of course, it definitely will affect the other parts of the developing embryo or fetus, in that case, including facial clefting. So if you see a baby that is born with facial cleft, whether it is a complete clefting or partial clefting, it's usually as a primary result of nutritional deficiency. And of course, there are some other behavioral factors as well, including drinking alcohol, smoking, cigarette, and poorer hygiene in pregnancy. All of that have been associated with developmental abnormalities of a fetus. So that would be the way to apply the kind of knowledge we are getting from here, that those who are in the childbearing age should bear it in mind that what they put into their body will affect their offspring.
Absolutely.
More importantly, if they have gum problems, they should take care of it. Because if they don't take care of their gum problems, when they are pregnant, their babies or the developing babies will be small. They will have very small babies because the babies will not get enough nutrients.
Thank you.
So most of the babies may die before birth. And many of them will die soon after birth because their organs are not fully formed. So
thank you so much. Much appreciated. I hope the question was answered. This was somebody who wanted to, piggyback on what they had learned and get more educated. Well, this brings us to the Medical Mondays moment. And guess what? The gift today is an awesome gift that is not going to be given to anybody. I did not get any information on who brought how many people to the forum. The gift today was going to be Shea Butter from Denise Shem, Shem. So we look forward to next week to see who our winner will be.
Thank you so much, Dr. O. Before we leave, Dr. Ajibade, your final words.
And include coming back next week.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. O.
Excuse me, can I quickly say one thing? I raised my hand several times, but I wasn't called.
I gave you the opportunity, sir.
But I answered the question that that the person had. But I just wanted to allude to what Dr. Okpeyemi was asking about diagnosis, or screening for cancers. There are several screenings that are available, particularly in the oral and the esophageal areas of the body. The first one I want to mention is called the oral CDX, and the second one is endo CDX. These are very, simple, non-invasive ways of finding out whether a lesion or some kind of change in the mouth is precancerous. So I'll be glad to talk more with Dr. Okpeyemi, Adewale, I think it's Adewale,
Thank you very much.
outside this presentation. So
thank you. Now over to you, Dr. Ajibade.
Okay, all right. I mean, my batteries are running low. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. O, and for everyone for listening and for your participation. I've learned a lot from all this whole interaction. There are solutions. There always will be solutions. It's just that they are not always apparent. They're not always on the surface. So you have to dig for it. So I really want to encourage people to take your health in your hands, to really search for these solutions and to be proactive about your health. As Black people, like I said in the beginning, we tend to be very careless about our health, unfortunately. So I really want to encourage you to start by taking some of these steps that we've talked about on the program today. Put them into your daily life. Vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc at the very least, and fiber, please. And then you can build upon it and search for better immune support supplements, better anti-inflammatory support supplements. So with that, again, thank you so much, Dr. O, and everybody.
And you're coming back next week?
Yes, I will come back next week. This is Dr. O. I can't. Have you seen the movie? She who must be obeyed.
Ursula Andress
from way back in the 70s or 80s. That's why.
Ursula Andress.
Was that Ursula? I was
Ursula
asked by
Andres.
Dr. So, Ursula Andres. Okay. So how could I possibly refuse?
Thank you so much. So we're going to be having Dr. Ajibade return next week, and Dr. Moses, Ademola Moses, has his hand raised.
Yeah, before we let Dr. Ajibade go, I think he mentioned something about the supplements. I was wondering if the body is still making all these vitamins. I hope we are not going to be overloading ourselves or depriving the body of actually performing its function by putting all these extra vitamins into the body. That's just my concern. Thank you.
Good question.
Excellent question.
Yes.
Dr. Bill,
yes.
What's your experience? Because you did nutrition.
Okay. Doctor, there are things that we call essential vitamins, which are made by the body. And then there's non-essential, which we have to add in to the body. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast right now. Our body has basically prepared us in some form of fashion. But then again, we've got to use our sense and sensibilities to add things to it. Sadly, the marketplace does not afford us quality foods and or other items where we can get the needed vitamins, which are not essential, into our bodies. So we have to go into a tablet form and or powder form to get those items that we need. And it is environmental right now. Some of the products are bad, some of the products are good. That's where we've got to read the label and or ask the questions about it. Because of course, we all don't know everything. So we've got to ask the questions about it. Because it is critical that we feed the bodies in the proper way. Remember, essential vitamins, we make ourselves. Non-essential, we've got to go outside and buy and put in. And you could go to the internet and find out what the essential vitamins are. But, and I'll give an example again. There was a gentleman who expounded on vitamin C. He was taking 20,000 units of vitamin C. And he claimed that it cured cancer. Now, he was a very, very, very popular clinician. And yes, I believe it would kill cancer, but it killed the body at the same time. So basically, you're curing the problem, but you're killing the host. So good question. Excellent question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bill, Dr. O, and Dr.